At 1-800-Flowers.com, we know that connections are at the heart of being human. Whether celebrating life's joys or comforting during tough times, 1-800-Flowers helps you express what words can't. For nearly 50 years, millions have trusted 1-800-Flowers to deliver thoughtful gifts that help create lasting bonds. Because it's more than just a gift. It's your way of showing you care. Visit 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST and connect today. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.
7 things you don't really need to know, but probably should. I'm Ciara Revin, and this is the Sunday 7.
On today's episode of the award-winning Sunday 7, we celebrate this year's Nobel Prize winners, get a strange wake-up call from Will Guyatt, find out what age we can expect to live to, and sit in on some brain surgery on a brown bear called Bucky. As usual, please do follow and share if you're enjoying this episode, or even leave a review. We're here 7 days a week at 7 a.m. with the 7 biggest stories on the Smart 7. But first, it was on this day in 1953, the first patent for an ultrasonic burglar alarm was issued to Samuel Bagnall of New York City. His design was intended to detect movement in a confined space caused by intruders or by fire using a sound wave of 19,000 hertz, which would be disrupted by a moving body and cause the alarm to sound. This week has seen the 2024 Nobel Prizes awarded across science, literature and the Nobel Peace Prize. The winners receive a gold medal and a diploma and a cash prize of 11 million Swedish crowns, which comes to about £800,000. The first to be announced for the medicine or physiology was the prize going jointly to Victor Ambros and Gary Ruvkun for their work in the discovery of microRNA and its role in post-transcriptional gene regulation. Essentially, they discovered an entirely new class of tiny RNA molecules that play a hugely significant role in regulating genes and prove to be essential in how multicellular organisms, including humans, function. Their work has led to the discovery that human genome codes for over 1,000 microRNAs. Gary Ruvkun is a molecular biologist and a professor of genetics at Harvard Medical School in Boston, and he was surprised to be recognised.
As the field exploded, which was just a joy to watch, then there was a sense that this is the sort of sea change that gets awards and things. But that took a long time and was an unbelievable pleasure to participate in. The talent that got attracted to the field was magnificent. And, the meetings with, 200 or 300 people were electrifying and still are great.
Tuesday saw the winners of the Physics Award, which was jointly presented to Geoffrey Hinton and John Hopfield for their discoveries and inventions in the field of machine learning, which helped to pave the way for today's boom in artificial intelligence. John Hopfield is a professor emeritus at Princeton University, and his work is creating an associative memory that could store and reconstruct images, has been a critical building block for AI. Geoffrey Hinton is now a professor emeritus at the University of Toronto, but he's known as the godfather of AI, and he quit his high-profile job at Google last year and has consistently warned that the dangers that AI can pose to humanity if not properly regulated. He says AI could be a very particular type of threat.
So I think it's rather different from climate change. With climate change, everybody knows what needs to be done. We need to stop burning carbon. Here we're dealing with something where we have much less idea of what's going to happen and what to do about it. And so I wish I had a sort of simple recipe that if you do this, everything's going to be okay, but I don't. In particular, with respect to the existential threat of these things getting out of control and taking over, I think we're at a kind of bifurcation point in history where in the next few years, we need to figure out if there's a way to deal with that threat. So I think it's very important right now for people to be working on the issue of how would we keep control. We need to put a lot of research effort into it. I think one thing governments can do is force the big companies to spend a lot more of their resources on safety research.
Wednesday was the turn of chemistry, and the prize went to 3 scientists for their work on proteins. David Baker is a biochemist at the University of Washington Medical School, and he used amino acids to create completely new types of proteins, which have gone to be used in vaccines, nanomaterials and even tiny sensors. The prize was also presented to Dr. Demis Hassabis and Dr. John Juniper, who are senior computer scientists at Google's DeepMind, for their work on protein structures. They built an artificial intelligence model that was able to correctly predict the structure of almost 200 million proteins. When it came to the award announcement, though, they almost missed out.
Actually, strangely, I don't think the committee had our phone numbers, so We got a random call through my wife's laptop on some kind of Teams page, and I think she was sort of ignoring it because she was working. And then eventually about the third or fourth call, she decided to answer it, and then it was a call from Sweden saying, "Can we get a hold of me?" And then I needed to give them John's number. So it was quite a funny sequence, actually.
It's been another strange week in the world of tech, whether it was the sight of Elon Musk doing some kind of deranged cheerleader dance on stage with Donald Trump or Bill Gates dropping out of the world's top 10 richest people list. But when it comes to big tech, there's only one man we trust to walk the line between lunatic and philanthropist, and that's the Smart 7's very own tech guru, Will Guyatt. So Will, I hear you're expecting a very important package this weekend. What is it?
The Japanese games company Nintendo, creators of Super Mario and the Switch console, are back doing what some like me argue they do best, making really weird products. Just when everyone else is eagerly awaiting the follow-up to the Switch, the company goes and releases its first new hardware product in several years, and it's a bedside alarm clock, and it's called Alarmo, and mine should be here literally any minute now. If you're wondering what the hell Alarmo is, it looks like a clock that would exist in the Mushroom Kingdom where Mario spends most of his days. It's got a screen on the front of the device where characters like Mario and those from other Nintendo game franchises will appear. It's built around a motion sensor, so it'll either dispatch more characters to wake you up when you move from your slumber, or increase the tension with music and sound effects if you aren't getting up. But once you're up and moving, it shuts off, but not before it gives you the iconic sound effects you get from powering up with a mushroom or picking up a coin. I am absolutely old enough to know better, but I am completely down with this until the other half chucks out of the bedroom within 12 minutes of it arriving.
It sounds like the most annoying alarm clock in the world. What's the strategy?
It does, but let's not forget, this is the company that persuaded us that motion-sensitive controls on our gaming was some kind of brave future when they released the Nintendo Wii, and they even attempted to usher in the world of 3D virtual reality back in 1995, when most of us were getting into the first Sony PlayStation. And from its history as a card game maker back in the 19th century, Nintendo has been pretty canny at making products that make them huge amounts of money, and then they move on to the next idea. So it's good to see that coming back. Well, why should they do this now? And the fact is, getting more sleep and tracking how you've slept have become big business in smartphones and in other smart tech. So if Nintendo can do it in some kind of less intrusive way and pack it full of the characters and games that people love, maybe they'd be more likely to give this a go. The Alarmo is selling at £90 in the UK and is currently only available for Nintendo Switch Online subscribers as a preview before it launches properly next year. And they sold out of their first batch in hours. That kind of makes it sound more and more like a success, doesn't it?
Nintendo are famously publicity shy, but there was a great Reddit theory floating around this week about a secret Nintendo account. Tell us more.
Bear with me on this one. There's something so bonkers that I'm even now wondering if it could be true. Gamers worldwide are waiting for Nintendo to announce more news on the successor to the Switch console, and thanks to some incredible online detectives, they reckon somebody stoking up interest in the console as a moderator on the Switch 2 subreddit is actually a social media boss at Nintendo. In sharing some Nintendo posts from X and speculating on when they might announce a launch date, others discovered screenshotted posts from Max Not Cool, that's his username, actually included options and information only available to someone with access to the official Nintendo of America X account. Now, intriguingly, this person, Max Not Cool, has also registered a subreddit for Nintendo Alarmo before it was announced, and intriguingly has one registered for Nintendo Shift. That's a product that doesn't currently exist. Now, this could all turn out to be cobblers, but all gamers want right now is Switch 2 hype, and will look anywhere for it.
Away from the happy world of Nintendo, things didn't get any better for Google this week, did they? It looks like the US government are seriously considering breaking the company up. How would that even work?
We were absolutely bang on the money earlier this year with our prediction that 2024 was big tech versus bigger law. The US Department of Justice is not playing around with its suggestion that Google is causing pernicious harm to Americans, with the company now commanding 90% of all internet search traffic, 60% of web browsing via Chrome, and a market share of around 71% for its Android operating systems on smartphones. It's become a really powerful company, and the suggestion imagine is that Google is now using its success and its monstrous financial power to stop other companies entering into any of its markets. The DOJ suggests that Google has essentially built this ecosystem that funnels all users into its advertising platforms and stops others from making money doing so. We expect to hear more from the Department of Justice in the next month or so about what they're going to do. And as you would expect, Google reckons breaking it up would be really bad news for all of us internet users and probably highly illegal. So there is going to be an almighty dust-up over this, and it won't be solved for a long time.
Who would buy the assets? Are we looking at Elon Musk buying Chrome? Surely not.
Given that X is now apparently worth less than a fifth of what he purchased it for, it feels unlikely to me that Elon will pick it up. But who knows, if it gives him and his frat boy pals another chance to have a laugh online, he's probably turning over the sofa as I talk. It's hard to know who will come in if Google have to step back from these markets. And bizarrely, right now, my money is on Microsoft, a company whose own future and business practices were famously challenged by the US government around a quarter century ago. But given that Google was paid out an insane $26 billion in 2021, just so it was the default search engine on your phone or your device, it shows how big this industry has become, and to keep winning big, you have to keep spending big.
And finally, rumours continue to circulate about Apple debuting a new wearable item, a ring. Is it a runner?
With a company as secretive as Apple, it's easy to get excited about product rumours. The idea that they're going to launch a smart ring as its next health tracker has been gathering steam over the last few months, particularly since Samsung entered into the space with its own version. The idea is that for some, wearing a ring no bigger than your wedding ring would be a far better way of feeding back various data from your body than wearing a smartwatch, and it would be an easier way of sleep tracking, checking your pulse, and doing the rest of the stuff you might have been doing with your watch. And throughout the last week, these rumours have been growing, with a variety of tech news sites adding their own take. But things appear to have come to a stop, with recognised Apple rumour busters Bloomberg, who often know about what's going on inside of Cupertino, California, have said that the company will be waiting out to see the industry mature before launching its own smart ring. Let's not forget it took Apple 3 or more years to launch their first smartwatch, after companies including Samsung and even Motorola had had a crack at the market.
Still to go on the Sunday 7, Florida has a lucky escape from Milton and bad news for our life expectancy.
It has dropped 50 millibars in 10 hours. I apologize. This is just horrific.
That was Florida weatherman John Morales earlier this week as he watched Hurricane Milton gathering strength as it approached the Tampa Bay region of Florida. Milton looks set to be the biggest storm in more than a century, and at one point it was at the maximum point for a Category 5 hurricane. John says it's a moment when you become less of a scientist and more emotional.
I have realized that I have changed. I have always been known as the just the facts, non-alarmist weather presenter, meteorologist here in a television market, frankly, which is all about hyping up tropical threats. And I was always swimming against that current and making sure people stayed calm. But here's the problem. Extreme weather events are multiplying. They're not only becoming more frequent, they're becoming more severe. That angst, I think, drove me to that point, combined with frustration about being a climate communicator for decades, asking for action on climate, and then realizing that not enough has been done.
The US has had a tough hurricane season so far, with Hurricane Helene unleashing unprecedented flooding in North Carolina that has seen the Federal Emergency Management Agency struggle to get resources to those in need quickly enough. Matters weren't helped by Donald Trump and his fellow MAGA Republicans spreading what Joe Biden called outright lies about the level of help the US government was providing. Fortunately, Hurricane Milton had reduced its strength by the time it hit Florida's coastline, but even as a Category 3 storm, it still caused plenty of damage. Michael Brennan is the director of the US's National Hurricane Center, and he summed up the destruction for MSNBC.
All indications are there was a very impactful storm surge from that landfall location southward along much of the southwest coast of Florida, all the way down to Fort Myers and Naples. Multiple feet of inundation. There's still flooded roads, still flooded areas along the coast. Coast, and we saw almost 20 inches of rain in the Tampa-St. Petersburg area, substantial hurricane-force wind gusts across much of the I-4 corridor, Metro Orlando. So it sort of played out as expected. We had that big tornado outbreak in southern Florida yesterday as well, so there were impacts across much of the state.
Warmer ocean temperatures cause hurricanes to be more intense and also produce more rainfall, such as Hurricane Helene, which caused catastrophic flooding in North Carolina and resulted in the deaths of more than 200 people. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis sounded relieved that things were a lot less severe when Milton hit Florida.
The storm was significant, but thankfully this was not the worst case scenario. The storm did weaken before landfall, and the storm surge, as initially reported, has not been as significant overall as what was observed for Hurricane Helene.
If you have hopes of living to be over 100 years of age, there was bad news this week. A new study suggests that human life expectancy is unlikely to significantly expand beyond current levels, even with breakthroughs in medicine. The study was published in the journal Nature Aging and says that although life expectancy in developed nations rose by about 30 years in the 20th century, the days of dramatic increases are probably over. Researchers from the University of Illinois studied populations in a wide range of countries, including the US, Japan and Australia, over a 30-year period, and concluded that unless there's a major breakthrough in biology, that any radical change in our lifespan is implausible in this century. Professor Dr. Spiegelhalter, who is a statistician in the Centre for Mathematical Sciences at the University of Cambridge, and he says any further improvements will probably be incremental.
Office for National Statistics currently have got a sort of baseline of assuming a continuing slow improvement around 6 weeks a year, which is what this study found. And in that case, females born now, taking account these improvements, would expect on average live to 90, and 1 in 5 will get to 100. I hope there's someone around to look after them in 2120. Medicine could change it, but actually most of the changes is due to improvements in public health and our behaviour. But of course we don't know what's happened with climate, pandemics, conflict, etc., etc.
Still to come on the Sunday 7, we head into space with Professor Brian Cox, and a bear gets brain surgery.
Right after this.
Explaining football to the friend who's just there for the nachos? Hard. Tailgating from home like a pro with snacks and drinks everyone will love? An easy win. And with Instacart helping deliver the snack time MVPs to your door, you're ready for the game in as fast as 30 minutes. So you never miss a play or lose your seat on the couch or have to go head to head for the last chicken wing. Shop game day faves on Instacart and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 grocery orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Other fees and terms apply.
Welcome back.
If I say Brian Cox to you, you're probably picturing the veteran actor who played Logan Roy in Succession, but actually we're focused on Professor Brian Cox. Now, he's also had an interesting career as a keyboard player in dance pop act D-Ream, but he's also a TV presenter and a proper scientist. His full title is Professor of Particle Physics at the University of Manchester School of Physics and Astronomy, but he's also the Royal Society Professor for Public Engagement in Science. With that hat on, he's made a brand new series for the BBC, which is available on iPlayer, called The Solar System. At a time when mankind has a keener interest in space than ever before, the show pulls together some of the data from the many and various exploration missions that are ongoing across Mars, the Moon and the wider solar system.
So we've made solar system series before, but there's 2 ideas. One is that we've got over 40 spacecraft out there at the moment, 40, sending an avalanche of data back from Mars and Jupiter, Saturn, everywhere. We covered the solar system. So the idea was, can we have a snapshot of our cosmic neighbourhood as it is now? So what is happening on the surface of Mars now? And there's this idea that came through when we were filming it, that the laws of nature here, those are the same laws that apply on Jupiter's moons and Saturn's moons. And so you can use things that happen here. We do some little experiments in the thing that allow you to explain why these volcanoes are erupting. So if you spin an egg that's hard-boiled and one that's raw, they spin differently. And you think, that's interesting, it's because one's sloshing around and the other one isn't. But that's how we discovered that there's a moon of Saturn called Enceladus, which is a tiny little moon. We discovered it has an ocean below the surface because of the way it spins. It's the same effect. And that's a really big deal because water may mean life. It's one of the prerequisites for life.
We've already had bad news on life expectancy in this episode, but there was also bad news on our natural habitat this week. Two new reports are sounding the alarm. The first from the World Wildlife Fund is called The Living Planet, and it reveals that there's been a 73% reduction in the global wildlife population over the last 50 years. Head of the WWF UK, Tanya Steele, says many habitats and ecosystems are on the brink as wild spaces are increasingly populated and developed. The second report, called The State of Natural Capital, is from Natural England, a body set up to advise the government on natural resources. They're warning that the UK's wetlands and forests are under increasing pressure and need to be protected and treated as long-term investment for the nation. The chair of Natural England is Tony Juniper.
We've tended to regard the loss of nature as regrettable but inevitable as we lean into these priorities to improve human health and well-being, create jobs, drive new industries. But what we now need to do is pause and say, actually, we're losing something here at the same time of huge importance, and it's essential. It's not a nice to have. This is about the vitality and possibilities for our economic development into the future.
This week saw a dramatic medical intervention, but not for a human, instead for a bear called Boki. He's a 2-year-old brown bear who lives in the Wildwood Trust, which is near Canterbury in Kent, and he'd been suffering from seizures. Vets assessed him and decided after an MRI scan that showed a build-up of fluid in his brain, known as hydrocephalus, that he needed to have surgery. They called Dr. Romain Pizzi, who is a Royal College of Surgeons recognised specialist in zoo and wildlife medicine, and the only surgeon to have carried out a similar operation on a black bear in Asia, and he agreed to travel to Kent and do the surgery this week. Dr. Pizzi described the procedure to ITV News.
We draw this very, very small hole in his skull, and we've inserted this very thin tube into that, through the brain, into that space called the ventricle. We will put the end of that tube into the belly, and then when he has a flare-up of pressure, that would normally, say, cause a seizure or a migraine, something terrible for him, and that's be getting worse, that excess pressure will open the valve, and those few drops of fluid or tiny amount, teaspoon of fluid, will just drain into the abdomen.
The surgery on the 23-stone bear took more than 5.5 hours and saw the fluid drained from his brain. Director of Zoo Operations at the Wildlife Trust, Mark Habben, said it was critical to get the operation done now before Boki settled in for winter hibernation.
We've got enough time where he's still going to have some activity so we can observe him. That's really important. We wouldn't have wanted to have done this much later, but as you say, let's hope in March we get a completely new, refreshed young bear.
This has been the Sunday 7. Wherever you're listening, do us a favour and hit the follow button. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. with the regular Smart 7. Have a great rest of your weekend. Written, produced and published by Daft Doris.
If there's one thing that my family and friends know me for, it's being an amazing gift giver. I owe it all to Celebrations Passport from 1-800-Flowers.com, my one-stop shopping site that has amazing gifts for every occasion. With Celebrations Passport, I get free shipping on thousands of amazing gifts. And the more gifts I give, the more perks and rewards I earn. To learn more and take your gift giving to the next level, visit 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.